I followed the rules I was taught while growing up. And in 2025 those rules broke. So this video is about 5 lessons that I learned when effort stopped guaranteeing outcomes. Plus the books that helped me make sense of them all. And stick around because I saved the most important bonus lesson for the end. Because it is what kept me going when nothing seemed to budge. Repeat this with me. We are all products of our time. I first encountered this notion while I was reading the book Masters of Sex. And no, it's not the Kama Sutra of the West. It is the biography of the couple Masters and Johnson who researched sex for all their lives practically. It is really good if you ask me. But anyway, when I first read it, it blew my mind and started to see my parents from a different perspective. So, if you have sometimes issues understanding someone from another generation, after you can understand it if you take their context. This concept is also highlighted in the first chapters of the book Psychology of Money. However, now I'm realizing that this also applies to me. Yeah, shocker. I know. In general, my approach to life, it is to see to what extent it trans others and accept it for what it is. But until this year, I did not realize to what extent it was influencing me. And then I realized that we all have silent scripts running our lives. Some are specific for the individual, like for example what you used to do in your family, but some others are specific to the generation, like what was the messaging on TV, schools, and general consensus of how to parent. Somehow 2025 brought about a lot of broken social contracts with millennials, the generation I am in. And well, these things you realize them once the contract is broken. For example, a typical social contract that was implied is to go to a good school, study hard, work hard, and you do not need to worry in the future. Let me tell you, and if you've been following me for a while, you know that I have followed it to a T. And while my life is relatively comfortable, I mean, I live in a warm, cozy apartment which is in the city, and I do not worry about things that are required for basic survival. So for sure it is a first world problem. However, I do not have the easy life that was promised. And if you are a fellow millennial, you know what I mean. So yeah, this idea that we are all products of our time made me now reflect what other invisible scripts are running my life. And now that you heard it as well, I hope it makes you think about your scripts as well. And now let's go to the next point, which is do not build and curate a house where you do not own the land. And let me explain this. As you probably have realized, here I am not talking about an actual house, although it does apply to a physical property as well, because you would not revamp and refurbish a rented out property, because one day the landlord can come, tell you thank you very much, and kicks you out or put up the rent for the work that you have done. And the same goes for immaterial things, because that means that you are living with the pretense that if you provide additional value, others are bound to appreciate and return the favor. But remember, this is all it is, a favor, which may or may not be cashed. And this basically makes you living at the mercy of others. And that just sucks, right? Because we have already established in the point earlier that social contracts break. Somewhere in the middle of this year, I decided to learn how to type without having to look at the keyboard. I know, about time, right? Anyway, I went on this site called Keyboard. I will provide a link down below. I made an account and started my journey. Really cool, and it is free if you want to try it out. So once I could type without looking, I now changed my goal to 100 words per minute. Right now, with the making of this video, well, I type around 60 words per minute. Let's see how that goes. Anyway, why am I bringing this up? Because over time, when I was practicing, I realized that one particular keyboard that I was using, I couldn't get more than 40 words per minute on a good round, and most often only around 20 words per minute. And after I investigated this a bit, I realized that this keyboard is slightly too big for my hands, making me stretch my fingers way too much. And additionally, the keys were a bit sticky and offered a bit of resistance. So I could have kept practicing typing on this keyboard and would have concluded that, man, I have to accept that I am not good at typing. But as soon as I changed the keyboard, my typing speed shot up. So here's the graph if you don't believe me. And as you can see, there is a huge drastic change. And what this taught me is that our environment shapes a lot of what we are capable of. and what we are unable to do. So just because you cannot do something now in your current situation and environment, it does not really mean that you are intrinsically incapable of doing the thing. You maybe just have to redesign your environment better. However, having said that, I also realized that your environment and your actions have an equal say. And mind you, this also accounts to relationships. Unless you figure out what state of mind brought you to the current unwanted situation, you can change your environment as much as you want. You are just bound to repeat the cycle. Because until you understand what underlying script has brought you here, that script will run again sooner or later. So if you are one to label something as toxic, take some time to yourself to question what brought you to this and what made you stay. Because we can run away from an environment, but not from ourselves. This principle of human nature is outlined in the book The Prince, where it says that most often people will do what is convenient and what gives social coin over what is good. And think about it. We know that our consumeristic practices are not good for the environment. However, we still buy a lot of things without caring much for the environment. Okay, sometimes we will ditch the plastic straw, but we often do this so that we can appease our conscience. And this is nicely portrayed by this nice science fiction book, The Gods Themselves. Really great, underrated book if you ask me. But anyway, this concept can be carried to people who are vocal about causes. Everyone wants status and visibility. However, only when it gives us social coin. And this occurs maybe because certain righteous tendencies that these causes were created to eliminate are just popping up again. And somehow we need to remember that the whole purpose for these movements was to reduce censorship, reduce hate, increase respect, and have equal rights. And so my rule of thumb is, and this I use to assess others and their motives, but also my own, is to ask myself, am I being an a-hole and justifying it by hiding behind a cause? This can take the form of someone claiming to be a feminist, but in their next sentence, they are diminishing another woman's contributions in order to get credit for themselves. Like in the book The Handmaid's Tale, where women advocate for a return of the old traditions while they themselves are running businesses. Well, needless to say, don't be like that. And if the ones around you are like that, what can I say? Run, just run. Don't be an a-hole when struck with good luck, and don't beat yourself up unnecessarily when struck with bad luck. This year, a scientific study of mine was rejected for publication after being under peer review for 9 months. Everyone we asked does not understand why it was rejected, as one reviewer greenlit it and the other's comments were not clear and minor at best. Anyway, I believed my paper to be solid of high quality, which, mind you, I still do. However, I was sure it was a done deal. Well, until it wasn't. I could have torn myself apart analyzing the situation, which I did for a while, trust me. But I have come to the conclusion that if something has a 95% likelihood of happening, it still has a 5% failure rate. We do not have control over all the variables, and knowing that you have done what was in your control to do and critically assessed all inputs, well, in the long term this knowledge will alleviate the sting. And yes, this stings quite a lot, but what we are left with is to accept and just move on. And once you do that, you can put your energy into something more of use to you. Some years will be tougher than others. For me, this year was particularly tough, as I felt I was being tested on all fronts. And there were days where I felt that it was unlikely that things will ever get better. And whenever I had those days, I just slowed down time, kept on cutting down until it felt okay to take time to breathe in peace. More often than not, I had time to have a coffee and observe things around me. This ritual to me really slowed down time in my head. Sometimes I felt that if I did that, the whole world would crumble. But when I took the time, the world stayed where it was before, and the fact that it just did that, it gave me the clarity needed to take the next step, and then the next, and then the next. I don't know about you, however, sometimes my brain feels like a ferret on cocaine. I try to analyze until I understand, and if I understand, I can fix. But while this attitude is amazing to solve experimental issues, it is a bad idea to apply it to everything in life. I now understand that I have a long way to go in this domain. However, I find that this book that I have read this year, actually it's called The Power of Now, is a great start. So if I had to boil down this year into one principle, it would be this famous prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And if we master this, I believe we have mastered life. And I really hope this for all of us. And with this, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!